Kentucky's rolling hills are home to a tradition that runs deeper than horse racing: bourbon. More than a drink, bourbon is woven into the state's identity and history. Generations have passed down the craft of turning corn, rye, and barley into a smooth, amber spirit. The process, charred oak barrels, patience, and skill, has shaped Kentucky's culture and legacy. The Kentucky Bourbon Trail draws visitors from around the world, eager to taste a piece of Americana. Bourbon is the economic heart of Kentucky, supporting thousands of jobs and entire communities. It fuels local farms, logging, and transport, generating billions for the state. For years, the bourbon industry boomed, with new distilleries opening and old ones expanding. The Bourbon Trail became a tourist magnet, bringing prosperity to small towns. But today, on August 5, 2025, the mood has shifted. The industry faces serious challenges: changing tastes, global trade disputes, and shifting social trends. The foundation of this iconic industry is shaking, and uncertainty is in the air. The golden age of bourbon may be ending, leaving everyone from master distillers to corn farmers wondering what's next. Kentucky's liquid gold stands at a crossroads. The future of this proud tradition is suddenly in question. The world is watching to see if bourbon can weather the storm. The first signs of trouble were easy to miss: small craft distilleries quietly closing in late 2023. At first, these seemed like isolated failures, but by 2024, closures became frequent and widespread. It wasn't just the small players; even established names felt the strain. By spring 2025, the crisis was undeniable. Headlines announced bankruptcies, layoffs, and shuttered distilleries. Old Lexington Distilling Company and Cumberland River Distillery, both local icons, closed their doors, citing plummeting sales. These weren't just business failures, they marked the end of local legacies. Industry analysts reported at least a dozen bankruptcies and over 1,500 direct job losses, with many more affected in farming, logistics, and tourism. Statewide bourbon sales dropped nearly 25% in 2 years, the steepest decline in half a century. Even industry giants like Heaven Hill and Wild Turkey announced hiring freezes and scaled back expansion. Warehouses are now filled with unsold bourbon, produced for a demand that's vanished. The optimism of the bourbon boom has evaporated, replaced by anxiety and fear. The question is no longer how high can we go, but how do we survive? The crisis is real, and it's hitting the heart of Kentucky's economy. The bourbon industry's future is suddenly uncertain. Nothing captured the crisis like the fall of Bardstown Bourbon Company. Once a symbol of innovation and growth, Bardstown's state-of-the-art facility and award-winning products made it a rising star. But heavy investments in expansion left them vulnerable when demand collapsed. In June 2025, Bardstown filed for bankruptcy, burdened by over $300 million in debt and a 50% drop in sales. The closure cost over 200 jobs in Bardstown, the self-proclaimed bourbon capital of the world. The shock was felt statewide. If Bardstown could fall, no one was safe. The event shattered confidence and forced other distilleries to rethink their strategies. The era of bold expansion was over. Caution and survival became the new priorities. Bardstown's collapse became a warning for the entire industry. The bourbon dream had soured, and the path forward was unclear. The roots of the crisis run deep into changing generational tastes. Gen Z, shaped by social media, prefers colorful spritzers and canned cocktails over traditional bourbon. On TikTok, bourbon is often seen as old-fashioned, something for dads and granddads. Health-conscious and mindful drinking trends mean Gen Z seeks lighter, lower-alcohol options. The industry failed to adapt, continuing to market bourbon as a strong, sophisticated drink. Viral trends now drive demand, but bourbon hasn't caught the wave. The image problem is real. Heritage and tradition don't always appeal to a generation craving novelty and shareable experiences. The loyal base of Gen X and Millennials is aging, and younger drinkers aren't replacing them. The result? A widening generation gap and falling sales. The bourbon industry missed the chance to connect with new consumers. Now, it faces the consequences of not evolving with the times. The challenge is clear: adapt or risk fading into the past. The future of bourbon depends on bridging this generational divide. Kentucky bourbon's troubles aren't just domestic, they're global. For years, exports to Europe and Asia fueled growth, but trade wars changed everything. Retaliatory tariffs made bourbon up to 25% more expensive overseas, slashing sales in key markets. Exports to the EU dropped by over 30% in a single year, and other markets followed. Distributors turned to local alternatives, leaving Kentucky with a surplus of unsold bourbon. Even as some disputes eased, the damage was done. Lost customers rarely return. The industry's global momentum stalled and export revenue dried up. The oversupply problem worsened, feeding the cycle of closures and layoffs. Tariffs closed off a vital escape valve for Kentucky's bourbon glut. The international setback is a major factor in today's crisis. The industry must now rebuild trust in markets abroad. The bourbon crisis ripples far beyond distilleries. Kentucky farmers, once assured buyers for their corn, now face canceled orders and financial hardship. Surplus crops and falling prices threaten family farms and rural communities. Tourism, too, is suffering. The once thriving Bourbon Trail is losing visitors as distilleries close or cut back. Local hotels, restaurants, and shops feel the pinch as bookings and spending drop. The industry's decline means less tax revenue and fewer jobs, weakening the state's economic fabric. Over $9 billion and 22,500 jobs are at stake. The chain reaction is clear. One distillery's failure hurts farmers, hoteliers, and shopkeepers alike. The entire region feels the strain as the bourbon engine sputters. The crisis is more than numbers. It's a threat to Kentucky's way of life. The state's prosperity is tied to bourbon's fate. The stakes have never been higher. Behind every job lost is a family, a story, and a community in pain. Distillery closures mean skilled workers, master distillers, engineers, tour guides, suddenly face unemployment. In small towns, the distillery is often the heart of the community, and its loss tears at the social fabric. Local businesses, from diners to schools, feel the ripple effects as spending drops. The crisis extends to supporting industries. Truck drivers, barrel makers, and marketers all face layoffs. A Marion County cooperative recently cut a third of its workforce after barrel orders dried up. Many workers have specialized skills, making it hard to find new jobs outside the industry. Some may leave Kentucky altogether, draining the state of talent and tradition. The loss is more than economic. It's a loss of hope and identity. The bourbon crisis is a human crisis, reshaping lives and communities. Recovery will require more than just economic solutions. The rise of wellness culture and the sober curious movement is reshaping drinking habits. Consumers of all ages are seeking low or no alcohol options, challenging bourbon's high-proof identity. Bourbon can't simply be watered down without losing its character, forcing the industry to innovate. Some distilleries are launching bourbon-based canned cocktails and experimenting with non-alcoholic spirits. These products are still niche, but they signal a willingness to adapt. Success will depend on creative marketing and embracing new trends. The future of bourbon may be in cans, spritzers, or even non-alcoholic forms. Embracing change is now essential for survival. Kentucky bourbon stands at a crossroads, facing a crisis driven by shifting tastes, tariffs, and cultural change. The old days of easy growth are gone. Survival demands innovation. Distilleries must diversify, offering ready-to-drink cocktails, lower-proof options, and premium non-alcoholic spirits. Rebuilding international markets is crucial, requiring industry and government cooperation to restore trust and trade. Targeted marketing abroad and at home can help recapture lost ground. The industry must tell a new story, one that appeals to younger generations and modern sensibilities. Bourbon's heritage is an asset, but its future depends on adaptation. The journey ahead will be difficult, but Kentucky's spirit is resilient. By embracing change, bourbon can weather the storm and emerge stronger. The world is watching to see if this American icon can reinvent itself. The next chapter for Kentucky's liquid gold begins now.